I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we dive into the compelling narrative of Ronis Story, A Daughter of Africa by Veronica Walker. We are joined today by her son, Philippe Walker. This is a gripping account of a courageous second-generation white African woman fighting against societal norms to protect her children and reclaim her voice. From overcoming loss to battling gender inequality, Veronica's story is an inspiring tale of resilience and empowerment. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we thank the team for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like Veronica by subscribing to this channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Philippe, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm sure your mother is smiling down, very proud that you are representing her work here today.
Oh, I hope so. Yes.
Yeah,
It was a nice
absolutely.
thought. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your mom, Roni.
My mother, she was a second generation person born in Africa. Um, Her father was actually born in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. Um, and then my mother was born in a very small town on the border between what is now Zimbabwe and Mozambique, in a town that I always call Tali, but it's now called Mutari.
Mhm.
Um, And she then traveled, she got married to my father, who was a Scottish airman who went out to South Africa during the Second World War. And he decided to become a farmer. And so she followed him around while he went from farm to farm and failing at almost all of them.
Mm.
Um, and so she was the one that always had to pack up everything and then pack up the kids and follow him to the next one and start again, um,
Mm.
which I think is where quite a lot of the resilience in my family has come from.
Mm. Yeah. Your mom was a very strong woman, a courageous woman. She faced a lot of inequities in her life. What were the challenges she faced as a white African woman?
I think people forget that there were two kinds of white people in Africa, specifically where you had um, like a British colony, like Rhodesia was at the time,
Mhm.
because a lot of white people used to go home every 6 months because they were employed by the British Foreign Office. My mother used to go home every night because she had been born there and she lived there. Um, she also came from a family, my grandfather, God bless him, was also like my father, a bit of a waste of space. Um, he failed at being a gold prospector, gold miner, gold prospector, and he failed at being a farmer. And so my grandmother used to follow him around also, um, bearing in mind this is the 1920s and 1930s in Africa, where you didn't have tar roads, you didn't have telephones. Um, so my mother grew up in an atmosphere of that sort of desperation, looking for the penny after penny after penny. She also grew up in a time when, like in England in the Victorian era, when a woman got married, she belonged to a husband, and it was a husband who decided what they were going to do. It was the husband who decided what they were going to say. And of course, when the husband then failed at producing a safe environment for the children, the woman had to step up and say, "Right, I'm going to take over."
Mm.
Um, and there was a lot of problems. My mother, for example, could not get a job unless her husband signed the agreement. She couldn't open a bank account because it was her husband's money, even though she would earn the money, it belonged to the husband. So if she wanted to open a bank account, he had to sign to say that she was allowed to do so.
Yeah.
Um, and there was one point, I believe, that my mother decided to leave my father, but was told that because she was only a woman, all the three children that she had at the time would belong to him.
Mm.
and she didn't have a say in anything. But even if they were divorced, she would still have to have his permission to get a job.
Mm.
Um,
Amazing.
so there was a lot of restrictions on women at the time, white women at the time. Um, Black women did have a very different way of doing things. Their policies were different in the Black population. Um, and they're quite different from what's happening in the white population.
Yeah.
And of course, because she belonged to a group of people that lived in Africa, whereas a lot of the English people went back home, they were even different.
Mm.
You know, their lives were very different from what my parents were.
Yeah. It's an amazing story, an amazing journey. Where living in a society where your mom was so restrained from having freedom, really. I mean, if you can't bank, you have no freedom. If you can't do
Absolutely.
things without your husband's permission, you have no freedom. Tell us about her writing this book. Was it her journal? Did she write it to be a memoir? And tell us about that part of it.
No, my mother, um, we eventually came to live in England. Um, we lived through the Rhodesian War, um, and we finally came to England in the 1980s. Yes, 1983, I came to England. My mother came to England in 1985. When my niece and nephew were born, because they were born in England, um, my mother thought that her side of the story would not, nobody was writing about white women's experiences in Africa,
Mm.
um, particularly a white woman's experience, because white women's voices were even more unlistened to, because politically they were not the right sort of people that we were listening to.
Mm.
So she began to write this book um, purely as a memoir for my nieces and nephews to understand where she was coming from
Mm.
and to understand what made um, my siblings and myself. Um, and it was only after she died that I decided to publish the book because we didn't give her a memorial stone. Um, she died in a town that I've never been back to. Um, and I have come across several deaths in my own life where you have buried somebody and you've never been back to that place where they've been buried.
Mm.
Um, so having the book published, we can all of us had a book each, so we all have a sort of a memory of her with
Yeah.
us that we carry around rather than spending a lot of money on a gravestone that we never see.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful way to keep your mother's life, voice, wisdom, courage, strength all alive because it's captured within the pages of this book that the world now can enjoy and share and learn from. What do you think folks can take away from your mother's story? What do you think they can learn from the life of Veronica Walker and this woman who persevered despite insurmountable odds or what seemed to be insurmountable odds at times?
I think she had a tremendous faith in life, actually. She had a tremendous faith, religious faith. Um, and I think that helped her get through it. And I think what also now, whatever faith you have, if you believe in that faith and go with that faith, it does help you. It's a way of helping you cope with things. I also think learning to learning to be yourself and actually walking away with yourself rather than depending on somebody else.
Mm.
Um, because you are stronger than you think you are. And I think life always will throw things at you to test you. And these are only things that can test you, and you can only get stronger from them. And I think the way she was always thrown to the ground and got up and fought on again for the next battle, I
Mm.
think is something that anybody can take away with and actually realize that your battles are things that you can actually overcome and you can actually work through them if you believe in yourself like she did. Well, she had to believe in herself. She had to learn to fight.
Yeah. Yeah. She fought probably primarily for her children, that she wanted to
Yes.
make sure that they were cared for, they were loved, and they were in her custody because she was at risk of losing them at one point as well.
Well,
It's an amazing book of strength, resilience, and overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. The name of the book is Ronis Story, A Daughter of Africa by Veronica Walker. We've been talking to her son, who has published this book in tribute to his late mother, a beautiful tribute indeed. This is a gripping account of a courageous second generation white African woman fighting against societal norms to protect her children and reclaim her voice. From overcoming loss to battling inequality, her story is an inspiring tale of resilience and empowerment that we all can learn from. Philippe, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
thank you very much. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.